Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sasha Star, and we are starting our Saturday's chess show with Chess Stars. And my first guest that I'm introducing today, right now, is International Master Kenneth Regan, and he is also Professor of Mathematics at the University of Buffalo. I would like to introduce, please, welcome Kenneth Regan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It is a great honor to be on, at least if on the number one for August. But so yes, so I'm an associate professor of computer science at the University of Buffalo, where I've been for 31 happy years, having previously done a postdocs at Cornell and Oxford University, where I got my doctoral degree after undergraduate at Princeton.
It is very, very impressive. And what is the most impressive is where your career started to combine both chess and computer science, and made you probably the biggest expert on computer in chess applications, especially in the situation where we are facing right now. It's a cheating in online chess, which makes chess on a crossroad. It cannot continue to develop as an offline situation with the classical chess, because the last chess matches for a world championship were either unremarkable, to say it very mildly, and not to upset anybody and upset anybody. No, they're okay, but 12 draws in 12 games is not right about that. However, so now we are moving in a brave online world. And now I would like to have your observations, where we are, where are we going this month.
Well, very much a brave new world with all the cautions that name implies. I would say it does not seem to be affecting the level of the game. I'm about to publish an article contradicting a paper that made the claim that online chess was depressing ability. I think the paper jumped to conclusions, but the major issue is cheating. It's easier to cheat online, and what we're observing is a much higher rate of people doing it. And this is an area of human trust that really needs to be established, because we have methods of verifying it, but the methods of verifying it come after. We need the trust and the sportsmanship to come before.
Well, you mentioned something about human trust, and that makes you extremely optimistic man, because most people would dismiss such things.
Oh, you could take what I say and have the conclusion. I'm saying it's a matter of human trust, and if you don't believe in human trust, then it's a very pessimistic observation. Mm-hmm. But I'm saying what it is. There's no way we
can... Excellent. Let me introduce my other guests for a show, because they all know you and admire you just as well. And I'm pleased to introduce Michael Hoffer. Is a master in correspondence play. And actually, he was one who introduced me to Ken, right? And vice versa. Right, yeah. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Sasha. Thank you very much.
I don't know.
I would like to introduce,
but we've interacted for almost 10 years on Facebook.
Excellent. Yeah. And I'd like to introduce Jim Ede. He's a FIDE master, and he's done very well in organizing chess in the United States of America, and a very well-known organizer from, how they call you, Socialist Republic of
Northern California.
Northern California. Okay.
I live in the capitalist country of Silicon Valley, but it's surrounded by the Socialist Republic of Northern California.
Okay, so you have the best of both worlds, yes. Right? Excellent. Good for you.
I've never known a socialist republic to make good wine.
That's a good point.
Mike, tell me, please, you have some remarks or questions maybe to
Yes,
Ken?
Thank you, Sasha. Just so everyone knows that Ken is a really cool, well-rounded dude. Hi, Ken. Thank you for joining us with your busy schedule. I'd like to ask you two questions. Before I ask the chess question, can because some people might consider us nerds, I'd like for you to tell us your most interesting experiences in the mafia and your prospects for Josh Allen.
Okay, I'll do Josh Allen first. He can be a very exciting player. And I think what matters, what's been overlooked, is the quality of the offensive line around any young prospect is very important. I mean, we imported Drew Bledsoe from New England, and he was a flop. But the reason he was a flop is he was losing 3 yards a second after the snap. Like one game in Kansas City, he got blown back every play. But Josh, even though we had 2 notable retirements, including Kent Hull, we have good. We've invested in the O-line, not stinting there. So I think prospects for Josh Allen are rosy going forward. The guy can play. I was also a fan of Tyrod Taylor. Now, Mafia, I don't know what Mafia you mean.
Bills Mafia. Crazy people.
Bills Mafia.
I thought maybe we did the fire stuff.
Oh, it's been draped in mourning for a year because we lost Pancho Villa to cancer. Pancho Villa. He was a wonderful super fan from Texas and a humanitarian guy as well. So, but I did finally get to see a game in person thanks to my wife a year ago.
Wow.
So it was a great experience.
Cool.
Okay. Jim, would you like to have a couple of questions?
Yes, I would. First off, I wanted to clarify for our viewers that was a Buffalo Bills talk, American football. And it's a specialty of Mike's, and Ken is also eager sports fan as well. But my question, it goes to the heart of your comment about trust, because I sponsored the Northern California Chess Online Championship this year, and we had 3 Grandmasters, 3 International Masters, but everybody knew each other, and everybody watching knew everybody that was playing. And so we did run through after the games to make sure there was no cheating, but we all knew while we were watching it that no one was cheating.
That's great.
We had that. And I think that is a very important thing, but you could only do that with small groups. You can't.
A tournament like that, but I don't know if it was exactly the same one, was sent to me and came out completely clean. So
yeah, I think it was. I think we checked with you. Yes,
that's right. So yes. But it's good to hear that the trust was there beforehand. That's very important.
Okay, Mike. Any more questions?
Yeah, I have one more just before we get involved in the cheating stuff and how to solve it. Because there's something I just found out about you very recently. A few of us from back in the day remember how you beat Walter Brown as a kid, which is an amazing thing. But then the very next year, I didn't know this until like a week ago. The very next year, you ended up, a guy from New Jersey, in Mexico, playing the Soviets, playing Rafael Vaganyan. So I was curious who was on the other boards and what that experience was like for you.
That was wonderful. Actually, the previous year I went to Caracas. And to tell the whole thing, the tournament where I beat Brown was my breakout tournament because I think I defeated Deason the next round, then had draws against Banker and Salvatierra. And then I lost in the last round in 110 moves by Art Bisquire, being taught a lesson in 2 bishops versus bishop and knight. Nevertheless, my rating zoomed from 2225, where it had sat for 2.5 years, up to 2365, and that qualified me for the U.S. student team to play in Caracas, Venezuela. And so the only 2 times I played for the university team was when I was in high school, in 76. And in 76, in Venezuela, I defeated everybody I played but lost a game. I lost to Rui Lopez's black in 45 moves.
To who?
Well, to Yehuda Grunfeld of Israel.
He's a
So
friend of
I beat
mine.
everybody I played but lost a game. How can that happen?
Because he's a great player.
He
That's
is.
a very strong player.
but
Wow.
So I
Well,
used
it happens.
the riddle on my college application essays, and one school got it.
So who are the other boards in Mexico?
So in Mexico, let's see. So Mexico was the next year, and that was wonderful because the late Danny Kopech, 2-fisted Danny Kopech, he won a brilliant game against the Russian, if I remember correctly, or maybe he lost. It was a close game. I wish I'd looked up the details. but he was very spirited. Kim Commons was first board. Fedorowicz was there, and Art Deason was there. I think was he?
Wow.
I may be forgetting that as well. But I know two of my fellow juniors were there, and we did what teenage boys 17, 18 do, which is talk about the half of the population playing or not playing in the ladies section, and whatever. Tisdol and Fedorowicz were there.
Who was on the Soviet team?
So Soviet team had Vaganyan, as you know. Now Belyavsky, it was that year.
Oh my God.
And Romanishin, Mikhail Chishin, I think Dorfman. I may be conflating between the 2 years, but they were quite a powerful team. Nevertheless, we gave them a scare. My game against Vaganyan was a very weird game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's always played this best against the Soviets for some reason.
So, mad props to you, Ken.
Yeah, outstanding. Good war stories.
Yeah.
And I know some of the people that you're talking about, and I actually went to school he was in graduate school, Danny Kopek, but I was a freshman in college at the time. And so we played a lot of games, and he used to give time odds 5-2. And so he ended up giving me 5 minutes twice, and then it was 2-2 after that. But I learned so much from him. I can't tell you how much. I jumped class.
He was a great teacher, yeah. He and I played an exhibition game in Buffalo about 2006. We had a great local organizer, Mark Meath, who did some wonderful things for a few years. Yeah. And so we played in an exhibition game in Niagara Falls, and I think it was a draw. But where the point of the exhibition game was, each of us spoke about what we were thinking in separate cells during the game, just like they do at the confessionals now at the Sinkfield Cup.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, speaking about Vaganyan, he was actually playing in one small international tournament in Toronto, and he was at my house quite often, and I beat him once in a blitz game, 3-5, so it's quite respectable. And also, I was in Odessa in 1989, and there was the last ever championship of the Soviet Union, and Vaganyan won it for first time ever, and he became champion with very interesting circumstances. He was actually, there were two players leading into the last round. Most of them lost, and he won his last game and became undivided champion of the Soviet.
Oh, that's rare to become an undivided champion from the
incredible.
Yeah.
From being behind two, not one, two players.
Yeah.
Mathematically speaking, it's almost like you need a huge odds for that.
They're paired against each other if they're undefeated, but they must have played earlier. How did they not play each other?
Yeah, it's an incredible situation. However,
years now.
Sorry?
Vaganyan is on the Fair Play Commission with me from FIDE.
Oh.
So we actually greeted each other by email, last year. So again, after this is meeting again, sort of after 43 years.
Right.
Wow. I haven't talked to Rafik now for many years. What's happened was very interesting situation. There was, if you remember, in 1988, there was a FIDE World Championship in active, so-called rapid play in Mazatlan, in Mexico. It was the first ever such tournament. There was a big Soviet delegation. Karpov was playing, and Vaganyan, Tukmakov, Elvest, who was still playing for Soviet Union, many others. It was quite colorful tournament. Roman Dzindzichashvili was playing in that tournament too.
Sure, yes.
And apparently, I went there for a few days with my wife, Nava. We had very good time there. And Dzindzichashvili asked me if I would play with him backgammon, which I agreed. But Jim really always likes to give you some odds. He thinks that if you're playing without odds, it's unfair. He will take all my money. So he would. So I asked, what kind of odds in backgammon could be? He said, okay, I know what the odds are. Okay, you came from Canada. So for whatever you are losing, if you lose, you pay in Canadian dollars, and whatever you win, I'll pay you in US dollars. Maybe 20% at the time, as usual, actually. Okay, so probably 20%. Okay, I agreed. So we played several games. There was onlookers, including Karpov, and everybody else was. And I think they were doing some side bets here and there. So at the end of the day, I scored 87 points, and he scored 22 points.
Ooh.
So now he had to pay. So he says, okay, so 87 minus 22. I said, no, it's not right. You pay me 87, $5 points. So you pay me all that in US dollars, and then I'll pay you for my 22 points, all in Canadian dollars. That's how we do it.
Always thinking, Sasha. Always thinking.
Yeah, well, so we were all laughing and had a good time there. But okay, here comes the end of the tournament. As you know, Karpov was playing in the final. I think it was Gavrikov. I think he immigrated later on to, I think, Switzerland or something. But anyways, at that time he was also a Soviet player from Lithuania, I guess. So they played in the final. They drew all their games, and by coefficient, Karpov was declared the champion. Okay, there were pretty good cash prizes. Well, you call them cash prizes. Apparently, we'll talk about it in a sec. So here's the closing ceremony, and there's a good banquet, and everybody's drinking and eating, having a good time. However, it's already two past midnight. The next morning, there are flights out of Mazatlan, whoever flying where. So Karpov, all of a sudden, Karpov was no longer there. He had to leave because he had early flight, so he had to go to bed or so on. Now, all other grandmasters, including those three which I mentioned, Tukmakov, Elvis, and Vaganyan, they were giving checks, and each check was approximately, I think they divided probably third place. So anyway, they were approximately $17,000 each. Okay, so they hold the checks. Of course, they were very upset that it's not cash, because at that time they still had to declare their winnings to the Soviet Sport Committee, which they would have to give up all their checks or cash or whatever they would bring, and Sport Committee would give them equivalent in Russian rubles. It's not very pleasant thing to look forward to. However, you have to do that. So in order trying to help them, I offered them, I have my checkbook with me. So I offered them, they wanted sort of to split the check. So half they would declare and give it to Sport Committee, but another half they would keep to themselves. Okay, so I give each of them, I split the checks in two, and I did the same thing with all three of them. Got their checks, came back. Okay, so they left to Europe, to Soviet Union. I left to Canada. Next day, I'm going to the bank. So he said, no problem. We'll deposit the checks, but there will be a hold. Okay, of course. At the end of the hold, I was notified that all checks are NSF. There is no money to honor these checks. So what to do? I decided to contact Yasser Serevan because he was close to organizers and I knew him quite well. And so I phoned him and he said, yes, there is a problem. I said, so, but tell me before we go into it, what's happened with Karpov and his check? He said, well, Karpov was paid in cash and left next morning. Oh, I see. Okay, that's nice. So what's happened with other? Well, I have to work with organizers and see what kind of accommodations there will be made and so on. So I immediately phoned Tukmakov, and he told the same thing to other grandmasters, that don't rush to check this check that you have. and don't give anything to sport committee. Just says that you were not paid, which is very close to the truth. Anyway, thanks to Yasser, all that was settled about 6 months later. They were paid, so everything was rectified. So the end of the story was quite good.
Yeah,
Speaking about human trust, yes, it worked out. Yeah, everybody was happy. Now today, I was watching a very interesting program about this ongoing online tournament in. I can't say where it's being held because it's online. So it's online tournament, and there was quite interesting semifinal match between Jan Nepomniachtchi and Giri, and Giri won today's match. So tomorrow they will play another one. But the most interesting thing was that there was a Gary Kasparov making commentaries on the match. He mentioned a lot of things that I was sort of I was suspicious about that, but today he just clarified everything. So what Gary Kasparov was saying is this. He lost his match against IBM Deep Blue in 1997, right? If I'm
That's
correct.
right. Yep.
1997. Okay. Remember what's happened in the last game? For some reason, he just couldn't play the game.
He was
It could happen to anybody, right? He just fell apart and just closed the game without any resistance.
Yeah. So I have. Yeah. Okay. I'll let you finish, but I have studied this. I have a paper on this. So.
No, please tell us. It's your observation. I remember where I am. No, don't worry about it.
So I measured Deep Blue's quality in that match as having been in the high 2800s, and Kasparov just under 2600 in the two matches taken together, and of course especially low in the second match. You kind of need to put the matches together to get a really good sample size. The explanation is more that Kasparov played under his level than that Deep Blue was invincible. But Deep Blue, 2800 plus is no slouch.
Right.
It was,
absolutely
deserved a victory in that sense. And so this is part of a paper that has just been officially published in the Springer Verlag Lecture Notes 10,000th anniversary issue. So it's a prestigious, so representing all walks of computer science covered by Springer Verlag since the early 1970s. So this was a prestigious invitation, and I write about computer chess in general, but give my intrinsic ratings and my own work in the last 2 pages. That piece is actually dedicated to Danny Kopek and Hans Berliner in memoriam.
Great. Well, yes, let's assume that, and what Kasparov told, he told me probably about 3-4 years ago when I have interviewed with him in New York. He told me that he's not too upset about losing this last game of second match. Yes, he could have done better, but in 2-3 years he would lose anyway. It was obvious that the day is coming. So he said, yeah, maybe I could make a draw maybe in the last game. I could play better, but it's inevitable. It was just a matter of
Jinji has been the last human great battler.
Really?
Right. And then,
yeah.
And Nakamura to some extent, but Jinji especially, I'd say, yeah.
Well, then what's happened really, in the early 2000s, the computer became a dominant force, and nobody could overpower them anymore. No Kramnik or anybody else who would try. And then the matches between strongest computers and programs and human players, world champions or not, they just being terminated because it was obvious who is going to win. However, what's interesting thing is that the direction of development of computer play was in effect very much a positional style of playing. All these programs, including the strongest one of them, Stockfish, they were playing very careful positional play. There were some in the World Championship matches between computers. There were some, if I remember correctly, 500 moves games and 425 moves games, and it was very tedious process, which would be I watched a couple of games and I was vomiting watching these games, and I just couldn't bear.
So
However,
yeah.
however, enter a year 2017. Now, this is a remarkable year because the chess world has changed and will never be the same. It's a year of appearance, Alpha Zero. And I've looked almost all its published games. And what I found there, it's something absolutely astonishing. Now, I'm not going to go much further until I will show you at least one game. So at least all of us on the same page, but because I know some of you don't have this book, Game Changers, and most likely you didn't see this game. So what I'm going to do now,
Last month. Yeah.
I will just very quickly, without much commentaries, but I will run through the game.
Mm-hmm.
Just so we will discuss it a little bit further, but at least you will understand what I have in mind. Now, Stockfish is playing black in this game. So, white and the Alpha Zero black. The usual stuff. So far, theory.
It's an interesting choice for white.
Yeah. And here, I thought that it's a new move,
Yeah.
but I was wrong. It was already played. I remember there was a time when Fischer tried bishop e2, and on h6 he played knight h3, which was some kind of a novelty. And and I remember it was very funny a story when I was still in Odessa. I was very young, probably 20 years old, and there was Yefim Petrovich Geller. He was a fantastic grandmaster, and he was very friendly, and he was analyzing with some other masters and candidate masters, and somebody showed him this move, knight h3, and suggested that it's a new development in theory, and after that move, black is in trouble, and all kind of stuff. Geller looked so surprised, and he just said, hold on, who did say it's a good move? So somebody says, yes, I saw it. It's the latest development. He says, sit down and make your moves. And in about 6-7 moves, he would win the game easily. Okay, here's another one. He says, no, he made a mistake. Let's play again, and I will play a better move. Okay, sit down. 6-7 moves later, lost. Next one. So nobody could beat him or even make a draw in this position after knight h3. But anyway, that's beside the point, because we have different lines here.
But
okay. Yes?
I was going to say that Fischer had a way of studying old players like Steinitz that from a different era, and ideas from then. So they were new to us.
A lot of old ideas. So knight d5. So the knight is attacked on g5. He retreats. Bishop d6. And look, normally you should develop your pieces, castle, or so on. But Alpha Zero is playing a different brand of chess. It's much more active than Stockfish or Commodore or all this engine. So, game continues. And supposedly, somebody was suggesting that these pawns on g2 and g3, actually they are pretty good because they're controlling white center, although I fail to see how they control d4 and d5 squares.
Yes, right.
Adequate.
Well, I would like D4 here. Yeah, so.
Yeah, maybe I just don't know this variation very well. But, let's see what's
No, this is not controlling the center.
happening.
No, no.
Okay, he's preparing probably retreat knight c4. Okay, that's fine. Knight c4. Exchange. And now look at this position. White still has all its weaknesses. Because in my opinion, d3 and d4 and d2, they're weaknesses. I don't know. I'm from the old school, or maybe a little bit outdated school.
Nothing wrong with the old school.
Okay.
Yeah, but black has no knights, so.
Yeah, that's very important.
Soften up white's king side.
Because
You've learned this lesson about two bishops versus bishop and knight, huh?
Yes. Well, that's right.
Okay, the game continues. So white develops nicely and black does the same thing. Okay, now an active move, knight b5, queen g6. Hey, checkmate in one move, right?
Right.
You must defend. No exchanges so far. Okay, look at this.
Really? That's not, come on, I would not do that.
It just beats me.
No human would play that.
That doesn't too much sense to me.
In a position like this, when you're a couple of pawns down and you're trying to attack on the king side, h6. Well, so you played h6. What can you say?
Now, I would never have thought of that.
Yeah, h6 I would not have thought of because what's it doing? It's blocking rook lift. But anyway, in the future.
What's interesting that you see in this position. What's an obvious move for white would be to play something like queen d1, try to exchange queens, and if it fails, at least you will have queen g4, and you will have some g7 threats. So you would maybe equalize the game or so. However,
I can't see the top of the board now. There you go.
Sorry.
That's all right.
I'm manipulating. Okay. So the game continues, though, is rook a8. Okay, knight has to retreat. Now, how you can prevent queen from going from f1 to d1 to exchange? It's hard to say until you see the very next move.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, but I couldn't see the follow-up.
Bishop f3, you'll see in a sec. Hold on. G3, that's probably the only move, right? What else?
I guess if you take the bishop, then the rook lift is coming.
It's already there.
And I guess the rook lift had to get rid of white's knight off a7 because rook b6 could have been answered by knight c8 and knight e7 check if the rook goes to d6.
Excellent observation. That was the point of this move rook a8. Absolutely brilliant observation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, it's kind of scary even to look at the board because you see rook on a1, bishop on c3, knight on b5.
Oh, now he's preventing h4. So it's like
I don't know. It's almost like a Picasso painting or something.
Yeah,
that's the only move to hold. Actually, there's no much.
And your analyzing engine still thinks white is ahead. That's what's amazing.
Yeah. White has 2 extra pawns.
Yeah.
Yeah, does it?
Oh, yeah. Where do you go now?
Hello, baby. Now, look at the bishop a5, rook g5, and after bishop g8, f6. That ends the game. Because there is no defense against queen takes h3 and rook h5.
Oh, and suddenly the evaluation goes to 0. Wow! And the analyzing engine didn't have enough horizon to see that. Wow! Wow!
That's
something.
Okay, I don't know. I was speechless after watching this. I was speechless, and what essentially Gary said that after AlphaZero appearance. If before you had, here's a human chess, especially when Carlsen became the strongest and so on, and it's great. Here is a computer chess which is doing some awful 500 moves draws, and it's meaningless, and it's just awful. And all of a sudden, 2017 Alpha Zero comes and playing this type of games. And if you want to have another game or two, I think last Saturday, I showed something. It was incredible, and I think probably I will continue to show, so people will open their eyes, because that's just incredible. So now we're in the new era. Yes,
I must ask you, didn't that look artistic to you? Wasn't that aesthetically pleasing?
Yeah.
big time.
Yeah.
Big time. Well, you can find some brilliance similar to this in the games of Kasparov, probably Tal, maybe. But even their games are. It sees the game kind of flowing, and you can certainly understand. I remember, what very interesting observation I've heard from Duncan Saddles. He's Canadian grandmaster, played in some interzonal tournaments many years ago, and.
Good player.
Yeah, he was a good player, and he developed his own opening systems. Ken, have you ever met him over the board?
Or say?
Ever met Duncan Suttles?
No, I've heard about him. He's someone I would have liked to have met. I met Peter B. Assis, but never, the Duncan Suttles was never in that company.
Yeah, I see. Well, I spent a lot of time, and I was a director of the company where he merged with Yasser Serevan into this little company.
I remember there was a joint company, including that was going to promote Yasser's variant of chess. Yeah,
that's right. And but it was before that. It was about 1986 during these matches between Karpov and Kasparov. And I asked Duncan to share with me his thought about these matches, and who is what he preferred as of two players. And Daniel says something very interesting. He said that when he was watching Kasparov games, everything was sort of obvious. The way he played openings, very strong forcing lines, his attacks, energy. It was all fairly easy to explain. On the other hand, whenever he was watching Karpov's games, he just couldn't grasp the method, how Karpov wins his games, what kind of method he's using. Very often he couldn't guess his moves, whereas he could guess moves of Kasparov's most of the time. And he just said that what Karpov was doing in chess was very mysterious to him, and therefore not that he would admire Karpov more. He said that probably Kasparov is practically a stronger player of these two, but yet he just doesn't understand the method of Karpov's playing. That was his observation, and I think there are a lot of merits in it. Of course, I don't understand chess on the level of Duncan Suttles, but I think I would agree with him, right? What do you think, Ken?
I was inspired by Suttles coming up, and I forget the rules to Suttles chess. But if it's okay, let me cycle back and give some thoughts on a few of the things you've talked about. Where my own work intersects it. So first of all, you are right that computers play more positionally in this sense. They tend to create positions that are less forcing for either side, as measured by my model, about 5% less clarity, less cases where there is one best move. And I liken this, in fact, so in my TED Talk, which can be found in an article I co-wrote titled Ada the Amplifier, about Ada Lovelace, the female computer programmer from the 1800s. So I'll liken this to how in typical episode of Star Trek, Captain Kirk wants to take decisive action and force the situation, but Spock counsels, wait, let's think about this logically and consider other options. And that's more or less computer versus human style. So I have a 2014 co-authored paper showing this quantitatively. Then with AlphaZero, to my mind, that the most amazing thing about AlphaZero is the small size of the encoding of the network. You can download it with LilaZero, and it's less than half a gigabyte. It's less than the size of a typical cat video on Facebook. And that file, together with a shallow search, can beat the deep search of Stockfish. So all of the wisdom of chess can be packaged into a relatively small envelope, such that access to it confers the superhuman playing ability we just saw in your game. And my professional field, computational complexity, is all about quantifying that aspect of computing and the volume of information, how long it takes to deal with it. So that's the most amazing thing for me. I can put in a plug. I also do quantum computation. This is a co-authored textbook with a distinguished professor, Richard Lipton, emeritus of Princeton and Georgia Tech. This is with MIT Press. And there again, the issue is, does the power of quantum have incredible power packed into really tiny packages and fast execution? And it's still open, although Google claimed a demonstration of a quantum supremacy last fall. And on the blog that was started by Richard Lipton, my co-author, I have an article titled Quantum Supremacy at Last, in which I liken the statistical analysis done by Google for quantum to the statistical analysis in my chess cheating work.
And what's the practical implication of all of that?
Well, actually, the practical implication that I draw is that Google simplified their method. They were using a more complicated formula, but then realized that a simpler one without any logarithms would be sharper. So I'm very much on the side of science where you try to make things as simple as possible, but not simpler.
Yeah.
And often simplicity brings an advantage of reliability that is more useful than trying to extract the most power out of anything you do.
Wow.
And in fact, I believe, yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
It is. I agree. However, that raises another question, which is very highly tied to what we are just discussing. If historically speaking, we have three qualities of chess. The most important, I think there are more than three, but three the most important are that it combines science, right, sport, and art.
Yeah. Science, war, and art. That's what you said. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, loosely. Yeah. Now it's all been questioned in the last probably 10 to maybe even 20 years. However, we still, as traditional people like myself, who was raised in the Soviet Union and who believed every word Botvinnik said at the time, okay, so I'm still trying, and until proven absolutely horribly wrong, I'm still trying to hang on to that. So when Stockfish and others started to beat regular grandmasters, and there was no more competition between strongest programs and grandmasters, okay, they were believed as science and sport is concerned, okay, so the humans are now, they're all out, they're all beaten, and however, there is still aesthetic, which is an artistic premises where human beings are still unsurpassed. It's Tal games, it's Rubinstein, it's Lovkin, it's Kasparov, and all those great grandmasters. And now AlphaZero is coming.
Right.
And it's really just showed you just one game, but there are definitely several others.
There are 5 others that are incredible artwork. Yes.
Yes.
It's incredible artwork.
Yeah.
So now you see, when people are telling me, oh, Sasha, you are all wrong. Because how you can talk about, okay, if you take a fastest runner and he will compete with the BMW. The BMW will beat the shit out of him, and there is no competition. So how you can compare then the Stockfish or Alpha Zero with Carlson and all the best human players? Well, you see, in competition between runner and BMW, there's only one question: who comes first? That's it. There's no other questions. Now, here, if we want to save chess as an art and enjoy, then we are interested not only to see who is going to win, because we know who is going to win, but also to see how the method of winning. And what Alpha Zero demonstrates, not only that it can win, but it can win beautiful game in a fantastic style that you can not only appreciate it, but we can learn from it, and we can, you know, today when I was watching all these online games from this online tournament, Carlson and friends, you ask yourself, why am I spending my time watching this garbage instead of watching Alpha Zero games? How would you answer that question, Ken?
Yeah, that's a very tricky question. And part of it is, first of all, that human grandmasters have personalities, and a really high quality annotator can bring them out, such as some of the annotations in the American Chess Magazine that I've seen. And that can capture people's attention. I mean, you know, we have some preconceived impressions of certain players. You know, Giri Drorish, but actually also he's very subtle. Carlson being nettlesome and trenchant and going into playable murky positions right away and outthinking the opponent. I would like to see more comparison of Wesley So with Capablanca. And so that preserves human interest. And people have tried to do this for Stockfish with the G4 move, which now a lot of humans have adopted, and probably well. You could also say that G4 goes back to Shirov and earlier Keres, if you wish. Yep. So that sort of color commentary can preserve a lot of human interest, just as if you're
that's exactly what happened with this book, Game Changer. The commentaries of Sadr and Natasha Regan, they're just fantastic. I rate this book on the level of Kasparov's My Great Predecessors.
Yeah,
that's how high.
That's high praise indeed.
Yeah, high praise indeed. Yeah, it's merited. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm quite pleased with your answer, because indeed today's games are so complicated that without great first-rate commentaries, there is very little point of us even to watch these games. Never mind not so advanced chess players and kids and so on. I mean, you need really quality commentators. I rate as the best of them probably Yasser Seiravan, maybe Peter Svidler.
Yes.
Who else? Who are your favorite commentators, Ken?
Yeah, Peter Svidler I like quite a lot, especially also he knows cricket. So I'm a cricket fan, played cricket. But the thing with following games online is, of course, you see the evaluation, and some people only see red move, blunder, oh dear, and they're not. The engine doesn't tell you, or at least those engines interfaces don't tell you the complexity of the position, which is something that has taken me a lot of effort to model. And my modeling of depth and complexity is what has really bootstrapped my own anti-cheating detection to be much more powerful than it was a year ago.
Wow.
But so you could bring more of the richness, and people like Yasser and Svidler, do try to do this online, bring about how the position is rich. Even I'm just reading the ACM, American Chess Magazine, with Shankland on the cover, and the article on the U.S. Championship he won. And several of the written commentaries are saying, well, Stockfish likes this, but a human strategy, it's more compatible to do this. And I think this move was just as good overall. So if that kind of commentary could be delivered online, it would really enrich the experience. The other thing that I've said I would like to see is, I grew up as a child and I was thrilled by the books of the great masters, Pillsbury winning Hastings 1895, and it's written in reverent tone about those old masters and the old-fashioned diagrams. And I'm wondering if we could market a book that had the old-fashioned diagrams and talked about people like Anand and Svidler and Carlson, in old terms, even picture them wearing top hats and cravats and going to casinos in Monte Carlo or whatever. And so write with the hagiography of the old masters, but include the modern games, some of which have been really incredible brilliancies. Anand's win over Aronian as black comes to mind from Viscount, I think that was, or the candidates, I forget which.
I thought I had that book handy, but I didn't.
Yeah.
You have to go to a local library to find it.
No, I've got it somewhere. I just couldn't put my.
Well, that's very interesting. Actually, there are so many things that I wanted to discuss, but I feel we have to save something for our future program. It will run for 3.5 hours. I'm pretty sure it will go.
I love watching the St. Louis chess tournaments because of the commentary, including Yasser. It's just Jen is also good. Alexander, Maurice, they all bring a little something different to the table. But I do I think, if I'm remembering correctly, that the last one I attended, I was there in person, but I was also watching on a TV next door. So it was, they have what is it, King, I can't remember the name of the restaurant, but anyways, they had commentators there as well, different commentators than the one that were on the television. And it brought so much up to it. And I think one of them was using a computer to also help them do the analysis. But I don't want to be held to that because I'm not sure of that. But I think that they were looking at computer analysis as well to help them.
They are, yeah. Well, they can. I can tell the story of how I got into this. So I went from 1986 to 1996 without playing, and from 1996 to 2004 ditto. Okay, it's when I was at the apex of trying to solve the P versus NP problem, the biggest problem in my field, and raising a young family and all that. But my mother gave me Fritz as a Christmas present, and that came with 6 months online subscription. And hey, I found you could follow chess tournaments online. So I was following San Luis when Yasser was commentating, and I put a few things in the chat. But I was also using an early version of Ribka but I was doing it intelligently to try out trial moves. So it was a combination of Ken and Ribka. But Yasser liked it and put me on the broadcast for a moment. With this idea, and so that aspect of it, going over games with engines was present from the start. And I was online in the 2006 World Championship match when Silvio Danilow's accusing letter was released with the statistical comparisons with Fritz 9. And Frederick Friedel said on the same chat channel that I was on, I had commentary privileges as an IM, is there anyone qualified to help us evaluate such statistical accusations? And I realized, oh, yes, there is, me. So I very quickly went to work. And what helped was that I could spend late nights watching the baseball playoffs in October 2006. The Yankees were in it. So the Cardinals beat the Mets when Beltran did a third strike. And then we had the Yankee pitcher with the pine tar or whatever he had in his hand.
Oh, yeah.
And my mother also works as a Paris CPA, and she was up late needing help with Excel. And I was sitting there with my laptop until 2 a.m, taking data, trying to develop a scientific method to judge these accusations. And I was already with my conclusions that there had been no cheating on the eve of the final day's play, of the playoff. And I was loaded for bear. I was going to be very strident and talk about scientifically. The fact is that most of Kramnik's moves were forced, and that's why you do get a higher concordance to the computer, but it's completely natural. However, that day there was an incredible snowstorm in Buffalo, October 12, 2006, and it knocked out power for 5 days. So instead of following the final online, I was in boots bailing my basement, praying not to get electrocuted.
Right.
And helping a whole bunch of neighbors cope with it.
But Professor Regan, I've got to ask you before we run out of time, do we see the end of cheating in online chess?
I would hope that at least we see an effect of its abatement as people realize that you do get caught. But I'm afraid that we will not see the end of it. It's a question of whether it can be, whether it enables us to go forward well enough. I mean, baseball might as well ask the same question in the wake of the Astros sign sealing scandal, unfortunately.
Really?
Yeah. But I will say that unfortunately, I'm told that online backgammon got stopped by cheating. So I do think a lot more effort needs to go into suasion. That's persuasion without the per. And even having interfaces that show you coming up to a director's table, introducing you to the officials by face. So for instance, with the online Olympiad, you see Alex Holochak's face, Jarina Prolakova's face, Omer Salama, Alexander Prokhorov, the officials in charge. And that, I think even that would be a cue that might have some deterrent effect. The fact that online is so anonymous loses the human cues that would help it. If you can bring the rate of cheating, if you can have it, then that it makes that already makes a large difference.
What if you had a FIDE arbiter present at everybody? And again, we're talking about
high
level.
You can do that for Carlson level tournaments,
right?
But you can do that it's done, I guess, at least in part for the Chess.com Pro League at least in their finals. So of course that would be effective. They're trying to devise protocols for Zoom camera use that are effective without violating privacy laws.
Right.
That's already a difficult problem. Right. But for something like the online Olympiad, when people are playing alongside the world, no, it's not practical. Well, it would be maybe I don't know. I haven't read into the details of this. But COVID is not allowing us to say have all the players come on site and be in the same room and vigilate it. So,
that's what we're trying to avoid: all the travel and all the hotel expense. To be able to compete from your home.
Yeah.
But it seems like we have these insurmountable difficulties unless we get to a small group where we can manage it. For example, Sam Shanklin won the Northern California Championship, the online championship. But there was never a doubt that he was cheating, because,
Was he?
No, he was not cheating. No. And no one ever suspected him of it. I mean, Sasha would have, but I didn't.
Okay.
Well, there's the slippery slope phenomenon because you think, I can get away with one move or two moves. And in my Perpetual Chess podcast with Ben Johnson, I did a little blocking mathematical thing, saying, no, even if you have that attitude, if it's two moves per game, you can get caught. So I've tried with things like that.
Ken, I'm curious if you remember the game between Anand and Aronian from the 2014 candidates, where Aronian had played knight f4. Anand would not have played Carlsen for the world championship. Now, I asked Anand about this, and he gave a reasonable reason, but it just seems to me that was a very strange move, and I was wondering if you had an opinion on that. Maybe Aronian.
I don't remember it up top. I do know that White didn't have to collapse if it's the game we're thinking of. That White could have rolled with black shots and had a somewhat playable position. But.
Well, the commentators noticed knight f4 followed by knight takes g2, and later Wesley So crushed Ivanchuk at Vaikenze with that line.
Okay.
So, with the rook lift, very similar to what Sasha showed us.
Yeah.
Hey, do you know Rob Roy?
Well, who?
Connecticut.
Connecticut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah,
you
he
said.
stopped running tournaments because he had to buy 10 sneeze guards, and they cost $2,000. So there's another prospect for the end of over the board chess.
Yeah,
Very sad.
very sad. Yeah.
But it may be our reality. You know?
Yeah.
No,
So, Sasha, do we have a way to get around all this and keep chess where it doesn't die?
Well, a vaccine. I guess that's why, that's why I say go forward. It is important to keep chess active. Hopefully we'll have a vaccine, although, the time frame for this is still not going to put 2021 in the clear, even if the vaccine initially arrives in November, December.
one of my thoughts on this was that people, they wouldn't be incented to cheat if you didn't give them cash prizes. But that doesn't tend to be true.
No.
In fact, in practice, that people cheat for no reason at all.
Well, it's quantum. So in quantum mechanics, the principle is whatever can happen does happen in the micro world. And a lot of paradoxes of quantum mechanics are how much that applies to the macro world. But for humans, the axiom applies. I mean, look at the Darwin Awards every year.
Yes.
And so I put it down to Brownian motion. It can happen, therefore it does, with a certain statistical frequency that I wish were a tenth of what I'm observing.
Correct.
I'm very curious about practical implication of detecting cheating, and you have, let's see, a serious accusation of certain players that he cheated, and therefore, let's say he won some, not Carlson level tournament, but some chess.com tournament. Let's say he won first prize, $1,000. Okay, so because he was cheating, let's see, organizers would not pay his prize, $1,000. And if he would go to U.S. judge or court to say that he was cheated of his first prize, he wants to get his first prize, punitive damages, interest, and all the expenses and everything else. So the chess.com will look probably at around $15,000 when it will settle and down. What do you think the chances of such a player in the U.S. court of law to get his job?
Yeah, I didn't hear enough of the details of what you say, so I'll give a parallel answer first. About 5 or 6 years back, there was a player rated 2186 who won San Sebastian, player from Kuwait, over several 2,600 plus, 2,500 plus GMs, and this naturally raised eyebrows. But according to my statistics, it came out really within normal bounds, and the grandmasters who lost to him played really badly. Okay, so things like that can happen, and not only that, I mean that guy, was maybe around 2 sigma up, which is a 1 in 44 natural frequency. Things that have a 1 in 4,000 natural frequency do happen when you have thousands of events and several 100,000 games over the board per year. So the challenge is how to distinguish the systematic outliers, the cheaters, from the random outliers. And that's a very difficult discrimination process. And you have to be conservative, even the online sites. No one should ever doubt the amount of human care and consideration that goes into those determinations by online sites, especially since they deal with 40, 50, 60, 70 million games per month,
right?
Much larger comparison sample. But nevertheless, so there will often be cases where I could think something, if I were just betting, I would bet that this is cheating, but I'm not sure enough to be able to sanction it. However, again, one of the things that we're seeing is a situation where we have about a dozen or upwards of 20 such readings from a large tournament. And maybe we can't sanction any individual one, but we know that they can't all be honest with astronomical confidence. Where I would say with astronomical confidence, at least 8 or 9 of these 12 data points are not legit. It's a problem I call disjunctivitis. So the word disjunction means logical or. It must be the case that this one or that one or that one or that one is cheating. And of course, it's a play on the term conjunctivitis, which is an eye disease. But it is, that's the ailment, disjunctivitis.
Great.
So I can judge the overall health or non-health of a tournament with incredibly higher statistical confidence than I can judge any one player. And this quantifies the amount of the problem on the whole that we face. The other problem is that the number of confessions is less than 1/10 of the number of sanctions, let alone the number of probable cases.
Right.
Especially with young children and their parents, there's much too much resistance based on what the numbers are saying. And I think there's just too much fear of consequences. I mean, what is the definition of youth? It is the time where you can screw up and learn lessons. Yes. And some people just should have an atmosphere where they can take their medicine, learn, and move on. Yes.
Pretty much.
Okay,
go ahead.
What? I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you.
Sasha, we're having trouble with your audio.
Alexander, yeah. With my audio too?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
Sasha's,
yeah.
Your audio is a little disrupted, so you have to speak very clearly and slowly for us to understand you. Sasha.
Mike, your microphone on?
No. Yes, I was about to ask Ken about something.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Chess.com tends to really, I think, maybe be a little too, well, let me say it this way. I had a player that I detected that was cheating online. Chess.com did not catch him. I caught him and I told the parents and that stopped. But I had another one. We have to be careful with kids because prodigies, they suddenly get good. I had a guy that was accused of cheating and I don't think he cheated. So I think we really need to be careful. Go ahead, Ken.
Let me explain something. Okay, so now in a lot of these cases, see, one of the points of my work is that I give multiple indicators, not a single number. I really design my system to put the decision-making power in the hands of the arbiters. So one of my numbers is the intrinsic performance rating. So let's say I measure a kid playing 3,100. Okay, now here's the point. Let's picture we're an actual game. Let's say the kid is rated 1,600, but you wonder, wait, this kid might be a genius. Maybe his or her rating is really 2,100. Okay, now it turns out that difference that makes actually very little difference even in my z-scores. And I explain how, because the underlying math is the same as the way the rating system works with probabilities when you play chess. So if you're playing an opponent 1,000 points rated higher than you, your chances are very minimum. And as far as your betting, am I likely to stand a chance? It doesn't matter if the outrating is by 1,000 points or by 1,500 points. Okay. Now, underlying math, in some sense, it does. Your chances, if it's 15,000, your chance instead of being 1 in 5,000 is going to be 1 in 50,000. But practically, that doesn't make a difference. And that's what's happening with the numerics in my cheating cases. So also on the English chess forum, there was a lot of this discussion about, well, 1,600 underrated, players really playing 2,100. I've communicated a few z-scores to say it really didn't matter. Now, it is true that if you knock 4.75 down to 4.25, you have divided the odds by 10. So numerically, that makes a difference. But what it's converted the face value odds of 1 in a million to 1 in 100,000. After Bayesian reasoning, instead of 1 in 10, 99.99%, you're left with 99.9%. You're still well within the range of comfortable satisfaction.
Yes.
So I hope that people would understand with this analogy to the rating system that the estimate of the higher ability of young kids doesn't matter as much as people think it might. And also it is being taken into account. I was a young kid once. I began the show by telling you a tournament where I suddenly jumped 150 rating points that probably was latently there while I was 22, 25 all the time. And I studied one particular young kid's chess career, and found out how volatile it was. Sometimes he played 2,800 strength, while his rating was still around 2,500. And I was prepared to say, if this kid said, should I stay with chess and go pro, I was prepared to tell his mother, yeah, go pro, you've got the talent. Okay. But it didn't quite come to that, although I was in contact with the player's mother. So this sort of thing is very much taken into account by me from direct experience and scientific preparation, not just human kindness and thinking about things.
Well, Professor, I've got another question that is kind of the opposite of what we've been talking about. People playing above their performance expectations. What about throwing a game, which is one of the ways we classically saw cheating in over-the-board tournaments? And can you, for example, use your scripts to detect whether Keres was throwing his games in the Abro tournament? Or
I actually did that also with the restaurant tournament in 1985 and the 1948 tournament, and I did not get a statistically significant difference. In fact, I got something surprising from the 1948 tournament, and I can't for the life of me remember what it was, but it was something like Botvinnik didn't play that well either. From Curacao, again, I did not find anything statistically amiss. So I have done that. I have been asked about cases of sandbagging. I do catch cases where game score errors have caused huge drops in IPR. Like there was one game where a black rook was hanging on c5. It had really moved to c3, but it was in take to a pawn. And because of that, the players dropped 1,000 points in my intrinsic rating until we fixed the game score. It was obvious where the rook was supposed to be because the game score is king d2, and then rook retreats to c7. So that's an issue. However, the one time that I was really asked at a high level about throwing games in a norm tournament, there were two people who lost all their games except for drawing each other. And I measured their intrinsic rating, and their intrinsic rating was over 2,900. And you can read about this in an article with the title 13 Sigma. You can just Google that title and you'll find my article. It's on the blog run by Professor Lipton. I begin by making fun of 6 Sigma, saying, hey, you wimps, you only got 6 Sigma and I got 13. but it's about an evident, completely fraudulent tournament in Russia that was fabricated using computer games for the players. So I have not actually caught a case of sandbagging that way.
About Russia.
What?
About Russia. First of all, in hypothetical scenario where it would go in front of U.S. judge, which we just discussed a minute ago, I think that the first thing what the judge would ask to explain how the game of chess being played.
Right.
So he could arrive at some intelligent decision, never mind cheating and those statistics and anything else. But now let's get serious. In Russia, I was in Moscow about 10, 11 years ago. There was a small online tournament on the Russian side. And the first prize was $50. Some equivalent rubles, but it was equivalent of $50. And the winner of the tournament was accused that in the last round of his game, there was a move where he played with a black in a quite complicated position. He played rook a8, a7. And very next move or move later, I don't remember, he played back rook a7 to a8. So the organizers said that he was cheating. They didn't pay him his first prize. And he went to court and accused organizers that they deprived him of his first prize. He was not cheating. He wants punitive damages. He wants interest. He wants his prize and anything else, whatever judge will decide. So the judge's decision was that although these moves really look suspicious, and he contacted experts, and they said that yes, it's quite possible that he could use computer but it's not obvious because as the experienced player, he could arrive to those moves, at least theoretically speaking, and there is no proof. You have to prove beyond any reasonable doubt that it was a computer suggestion, and he used it as such. That has not been performed at all, failed. The organizers were punished severely. They had to pay him for his price, the punitive damages, and so on. They paid him equivalent, from what I remember, well over $500, which by actual standards at that time was considerable amount of money, but at least there was a precedent. Okay. Now, something else. You mentioned about the commentaries in the Grand Chess Tour tournaments, and Maurice Ashley.
Sorry, loud motorcycle outside. Say that again. Okay.
Okay, it happens in such messes. We are all. That's not. Actually, he's always using computer for his evaluation of positions. When he shows variations, he's the only one. The other people don't, neither Swidler nor Yasser Serov and so on. But he is using. Now, what is interesting though, that Maurice Ashley was playing once in our Predict the Move session, and he was predicting the moves. And you know who won the contest? 15 years old guy from Vancouver. A kid, practically.
Yeah.
His rating was, no, I think he was 11 years old, and his rating was, if I remember, 1,500. Mike, do you remember that? Were you playing in that contest?
Yeah.
Yeah, those contests are great.
And it was like my stepson, so he had gotten coaching from me. And he was just starting to get good, but he picked a bad move. That's the funny thing. He picked the losing move.
Yeah. I picked the losing move in a major game. Yes. So I've actually picked the losing pawn push in the Kasparov versus the world match in 1999. The B4. It followed principles I've written on my website, but it's a losing move. So I've had that experience.
That's how you make a big leap in these competitions. It's picking something no one else does.
From your losses, yes.
No.
No, I really was. I was working with Irina Krush and Ronald Henley and Paul, I forgot his last name at the time.
Oh, Irina Krush was on one of our programs. Probably
yes. She has some very interesting stories to tell about COVID.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. I drink golden milk now because of her.
You drink cold milk? Okay.
No, golden milk. It's turmeric.
Oh, okay. I know about that. Yeah.
I had costochondritis and it worked right away, so I really appreciate Irina mentioning that.
Yeah.
It's amazing. The doctor said, there's nothing you can do. But then Irina told me that, and it's like gone within the hour.
I don't know. Here in Canada, we have very strict protocol. Let's see, if you are walking on the street without mask, you're fined $2,500 right on the spot. Is it same in the United States, or it varies from state to state?
Our laws differ everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah. County to county.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the most misfortunate situation if you're fined $2,500 fine and you get sick anyway. Double whammy. You got fined to pay, and yet you got infected. That's the most atrocious.
Unfortunately, there's a case of Long Beach Island where we've gone for vacation. Had a lifeguard party with several hundred people, and a whole bunch of people caught it there. Unfortunately, the one thing, the outbreak began from a small cluster. It's like little fusion bombs, and so it can expand very rapidly again. So it's not to be trifled with at all.
But you know what USA stands for, Ken?
What?
This is in honor of Sasha. It's "you stupid, eh?"
Well, okay. Now, I will tell you that when I began my studies at Oxford, I studied percolation theory under Dominic Welsh. And that's a theory that's behind the design of gas masks and contagion. So there's some beautiful mathematical problems in it. It's not quite the model that works for COVID, because COVID's more free form, whereas percolation's on more structured, on structures, but very similar mathematics. And I've been wanting to do an article on the quantitative aspects of the spread of COVID and also inferencing from mathematical models. But the chess pandemic has just absorbed all my time.
Yes.
So that's the disposable time. As I co-write, the blog I co-write is considered one of the 3 or 4 most prominent mathematical computing blogs, or at least complexity and theory.
Honored to have you on. Thank you for joining us.
Okay. So yeah, it's rjlipton.wordpress.com, or you can just Google me, Kenneth Regan Buffalo. You'll find my entire website. It has a link to the blog and all my other work.
Awesome. Thank you for that tip too.
Mm-hmm.
Pleasure to see you, man.
Yes.
No one is safe from Google.
Yeah, well, that's right. Except actually, I make my screening data safe from Google, so I manage quite a number of gigabytes of dark web. So no robots, non-public links. So yeah, so I'm doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. You've got to.
Always wondering that in all these programs that we see on TV about the coronavirus and the fight with kind of suppressive and so on, everybody's consulting doctors, which is fine, but nobody's consulting mathematicians. How they see and how mathematically they can develop a formula how to control that. There should be some mathematical aspect. What do you think about this?
I'm afraid I did not get the tenor of the question. I didn't hear enough to make out what you're asking.
Yeah, there's some noise. I'm sorry, probably it's coming from me. Okay, my question is this: that everybody is consulting doctors about the spread of the coronavirus and how to contain it and so on. So my question is, why no one consults mathematicians and computer scientists to help to develop formula how to contain the coronavirus?
Now, one of the basic aspects of science is the intrinsic variability of measurements and the even higher variability of projections based on those measurements. We don't know how to get accurate data for the coronavirus. We can give you see charts of how wide those error bars are, even when it's just forecasting cases and fatalities. Different areas have different local situations. Nevertheless, there are ways to analyze measurements so that you can reach some definite conclusions, but the mathematics for doing that is one level above what most people learn in school, so it's very hard to communicate. There's analysis of variance techniques, ANOVA, that can sift out causes. There's Kai Friston has developed generative models that come from physics that give you relative likelihoods and enable you to evaluate hypotheses such as, for instance, is there a large share of the population that has some sort of resistance to the disease or has had COVID without even knowing it?
Yes.
Okay, and there are indirect indications that there is such a large share of the population, but it's not conclusive. It's just a reality of modeling. Right. And what's most important scientifically is that your model provides its own self-checks on its own accuracy. And that's something, if you read my article, Predicting Chess and Horses on the blog from last year, and also Predicating Predictivity, you'll see the extent to which my chess model does that. And this in general is very important to me. For instance, I'm about to write a critique of the paper by Kuhn, Zengers, and there's an S author too, that really jumps the gun on a conclusion of online chess being lower quality, and the real reason I discovered just last night, thanks to the podcast of Chris Chabris on Ben Johnson, that Carlsen played like a madman in that tournament. And maybe there were just weirdnesses going around, the first Carlsen Invitational. And that's a much more topical explanation for the low results, which I do confirm. But jumping to the massive conclusion that online chess is worse, which is refuted by the following 3 Carlsen tournaments, that's something that we need to get a better public understanding and be able to sift out and not have so much of jumping to conclusions like that. Of course, again, with coronavirus, we need people to think creativity. We need to tolerate a higher rate of scientific errors because someone may just find the combination, the light bulb goes off, and we make it advance. So we need to encourage creative people and tolerate their errors. But now you need to have a very balanced approach in order to sift standards of these things.
Well, also, I'm not alone in this. Is I've had terrible tournaments and I've had unbelievable tournaments where well beyond my predicted score, and certainly have underperformed at other tournaments. And my overall ratings stayed in a certain range, but my performances were completely different because it depended on my mood, how I felt, and all sorts of other variables. So this has to be built in to be expected.
Right, and that's what gets reflected into the error bars after training on large amounts of data, exhaustively on the last 10 years of chess-base, for instance. And I turn that around to what I regard as a Heisenberg uncertainty principle of human play, that the lower bound error bars in my model are, in fact, lower bounds on the intrinsic human variation going forward. That no one can, that you just cannot contain the blips and bleeps that go on in your brain that make you hang a night or even more. This is what makes me wonder about unconscious computation. I'll make a move because I learned something new about the move that I didn't know, but I haven't stopped to evaluate whether it really now is the best move. Then I realize, oh my gosh, I didn't consider this reply by my opponent 2 moves down the line. And then, oh, I'm not going to get checkmated. I have this defensive move. And maybe my unconscious mind saw it, or maybe it didn't. How do we know? But that intrinsic variation is just there. So I'm afraid there's nothing you can do about it except to play and enjoy it.
And sometimes a combination will come to me in a flash.
Yeah.
It isn't a result of calculation so much as all of a sudden it's an aha moment. And I don't know how that can be explained. Because it's not necessarily my playing strength.
I am a believer in subconscious computation, and I put that into practice. When I run a timed exam, say it's an 80-minute exam, I block out that the first 5 minutes are for me to read every problem on the exam. So that's what the exam paper says, 5 minutes for reading. And that gives an initial question and answer period before I enforce silence. I try to be silent for the whole exam. But I also think that it starts brains going and helps people think about the problems in an even way so that they're prepared when they come to the next problem.
Interesting. Sasha, you had something to say? You're coming in perfectly now.
Sorry, I forgot what I wanted to say. It wasn't something very important, because if it would be important, I wouldn't forget it.
Yes. Well, Professor, I also have to ask you this, is because some of these things you're telling us about strike me as absolutely fascinating. And how come I didn't know about your blog? Like, how are you getting the word out that you've got all this material, this really interesting material?
Well, I do post things on Facebook from time to time, but I don't know. Yeah, maybe I'm in a bit of a Buffalo bubble. Yeah, I mean, if you could spread things around, sure.
And also, I think people that find something that you've written that is fascinating to them, they should share it, because then more people might be interested in it and more people might be directed to your blog.
Sure, I was on the cover of Chess Life, and the article mentions the blog, has all the links. I couldn't do better than that. But maybe I have been intending to write an article about cheating for chessbase.com. I've just been kept too busy to do so.
Yes.
In fact, there's this for an arbiter in England. I've been promising her some commentary, and every day I'm just too busy at midnight to do it. So that's been the problem.
Yeah, it does interfere with your ability when you're doing actual work. It gets in the way of promoting yourself.
Right. And for instance, the current article on the blog, which is now a week old, we're about to write a new one. I stayed up till 2 a.m. Sunday night to finish it.
Yeah.
Then Monday it was picked up by aggregators and had over 4,000 reads that day for a mathematical article on Alexander Razborov's approximation method. Yeah, it was good going. So, but yeah, if it could be publicized more in the chess world. But what really matters to me is publicizing things that will bring down the rate of cheating, and it'll make people realize that yes, you can be caught, and also
One last question.
online cheating is easier, and at least it doesn't kill you. So that's the one thing that ought to be stressed in these cases. Nobody dies. Okay, you were cheating with Stockfish. Confess up, come clean, maybe even help us on the other side. But nobody died, all right? So it's not that huge a deal.
That's a brilliant way to end.
Brilliant answer. Yeah, and unfortunate thing about coronavirus is that it kills both Republicans and Democrats. Both.
Yes.
Well, I don't want to go into that, but there are many things that have been politicized that just should not have been.
Yeah. Listen, I would like to thank you so much for joining us in this program. I would like to say thank you so much also to Jim and to Michael. And I wish anytime soon we'll have a continuation of our program. It's incredible. There are about 7 or 8 questions that I didn't ask, and another one that I wanted to ask but forgot what it's all about. So maybe I'll remember it, and I will definitely ask that.
Okay, be happy to do it another time. Okay, yeah. Thank you very much. Good meeting you, and I hope to see you in person in Toronto when it becomes possible.
Please come, and we'll see you all.
All right.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Great show, Sasha. Good job. Thank you very much, Professor.
Okay. All right.